Hello, everybody. Big thank you to Don for letting me jump on to the stream last night and take part in the studio with his channel, Don Draws. I had a lot of fun. Been a while since I was on a live stream, and it, when you first on a live stream with a bunch of guys that are have been streaming together, it's they all have their beats and they all like they know like they can like talk over each other and like still be heard. Um, because I was my first time streaming with them. Yeah, I was kind of quiet and like when I think of something to say with what they were talking about, um, many times when I'd speak up, I'd be drowned out by the others on the stream, which that didn't bother me. But it's a lot of the times when you're on stream with people that you've never streamed for, you got to find everybody's got a beat and a rhythm, and you've got to find your place within that rhythm. So I'm hoping that if I get on the stream for future episodes, that I'll have a better grasp of interjecting and being part of the stream. So we'll find out. It all depends if I'm allowed on again. Now, I do want to take a short break from this to show you guys something. I really hope that I can be on the stream when Dan Panosian is on. I said when they first announced that Dan Panosian was going to be on the stream, I said I would be doing my own profit drawing and showing that on, and so I'd stipple that on the stream. So this is how it's going with profit. I have where he's like diving out of the panel, and he's diving into. You can see where all the swords and spears are, and he's just like diving in there. And I've got like an arrow breaking off. So that's how it's coming along. I want to have this drawing will be completely done by the time the stream is. So hopefully Don will let me on the stream, and I will be able to stipple this during the stream while Dan's on. That's the reason why I'm doing the drawing now, is I want to have time to have the drawing done so I can focus exclusively on stippling. Because you can see with being on last night that because I had to do so much drawing, I really wasn't able to spend too much time stippling. Oh, jeez. Look at that. Oh, well. I'll work around that. So, but I was really hoping uh, I hope that I'll be allowed on the stream with Dan Panosian. Hope that Don will invite me and allow me to be on. So that way, and I've already thought about it. See, last night, if anything, was a dry test run for me. A, been a while since I was streaming. B, I was excited. I was excited to be on the stream. And so, because I was excited to be on the stream, I didn't plug my phone charger into the right port for for keeping my phone charged. So that's when I hit the 3 hour mark. All of a sudden, the phone started to die. And I was like, "Son of a bitch!" So I shut it off. And what I've done is I thought about it last night, and I was thinking about it this morning. Because after I got off, I had to boot myself from the stream because my phone was dying. I didn't pay attention to the rest of the stream. I actually left the room, went down, spent some time with Miss Stippling. So this morning, I finished up this hand here, redrew the face, and started to ink the face. So I did some work on it more this morning, so you can see the work that's being done. So I'm gonna be working on this today, and so over the course of today, I'll probably be reposting. Like as soon as I get done with this video, I'll be posting an image of this, and then over the course of today, I anticipate to be posting this image 2 or 3 more times uh, for everybody to see. I hope, and I'll be tagging Don and everybody who was on the stream when I post it on X, so they can see the progress. So hopefully, like I said, hopefully he'll invite me on. If he doesn't invite me on, I will still be uh, inking it along with everybody. And what I'll do is I'll just send him DMs of the progress for him to share with the group. So, but so that's how it's going along. Now I thought if I'm able to stream with with Dan Panosian, I'm not going to be using my usual setup. What I'll do is it'll be kind of like this setup here at the bar, where what I'll do is I'll have the board. I'll be at the kitchen counter, and I'll have like multiple lights set up on the counter, along with this my rig for the camera. I'll have that set up on the counter, so that way it's like this will be flat, and the phone will be mounted like parallel to it up high, so that way you can see the progress as I stipple. Because that's what I really want to do is I really want to show you guys uh, how I stipple and doing like a full stipple drawing during the course of the stream. So I you gotta keep in mind my strength isn't my pencils. My strength is my inks is with doing the dots, because one of the things that hindered me and held me up over the course of doing Don draws was I redrew this guy like 3 times before I finally got him to the point where I was like, okay, I'm kind of satisfied that with this. So if you were actually to go and look at the stream and you go back to when I was first showing work, you'll look at it and you'll be able to tell that the drawing that I showed in the first progress report during the stream, you'll see that the image is the drawing is completely different than it is now. So, and that's because I like I said, I redrew him 2, 3 times. So I just, like I said, I just wasn't liking it. Wasn't liking it at all. So I'm not completely satisfied with this now. If I had the ability, I probably would redraw this again. But that's kind of like the thing about live stream is seeing the whole creative process. So, but I want you guys to see how see the inking method, because stippling takes so much long period of time. That's another reason why I'm doing this. I'm doing the drawing of profit now, is so that way I have the time to really show you guys the progress. So, but so yeah, I'm already thinking about how I'm going to stream next weekend if it's either I think it's next weekend if I'm allowed on the stream. And I hope I do. I hope I am. Because like I said to them when I first showed this drawing, the reason why I've got him in this pose as I do is it's kind of intentional. So that way I'm using the tentacles, as you can see here, to break up the images, the planes, and I'm creating panels. So let's say in 2 weeks they're doing favorite uh, favorite favorite Justice League character. While obviously it's Vibe, I would have Vibe like down in here or over here. I'd have Vibe in this drawing, so that way I have less of an area and I fit him into here. And let's say in a month from now, we're doing concrete. I would do concrete in here. So the whole purpose of having the tentacles like this is to break the plane up to create panels to have the other, so I can utilize the rest of the page. So, and again, part of that is because it just takes such a long period of time to draw and for me to draw and then stipple. So that's why. So, but if I'm allowed on, I'm allowed on. But if not, I will be showing you. I will be partaking in the chat. So, and I can understand it being like this was my first time on the show last night, and if there's a lot of other people that want to be on the show with Panosian, who have been on the show multiple times. I can see him going, "Yeah, Vaughn, I'd like to have you on, but I really got to let these other guys on. They've been on before multiple times. I got to let them on first," which I completely respect and understand. So, but so that's the hopefully the game plan. So, and I'm switching over to the new nib. Remember last week or 2 weeks ago I was talking about nibs and how you use the nibs. A new nib puts down a different line than an older nib, and so I'm intentionally doing that right now. So, and I'll actually do that down here with the metal down here. So, but and then of course we've got these insect and the legs of the spider here. So, but and you can see how it puts down a completely different line, very tight, very clean, fine dot, as opposed to these dots. That was the other thing also, is because it was my first time on. Uh, all of my good tools were still in the car from working here at the bar. So, like up here at the top, okay, this texture was done with an old bad nib, and so I'm not crazy about it. So I want to use my good tools. That's the other thing. Also, I'll make sure I'm using my good nibs when I'm doing profit. So, but and then of course, okay, something came up this week, and I thought this is how people do it. Apparently, I'm the outlier. I'm special. I'm special because somebody told me I'm special, even though nobody's special. I put my annuals and one shots and specials in front before the regular issues. Apparently, everybody puts it at the back. I've always done that. It just seems, I just, for whatever reason, when I started getting comics, that's where I put my annuals. And I think it was because back then in the 80s, generally and then the 90s, the annuals it was special. It marked something important going on in the title. It wasn't like the way it is now, where it's just a regular story. Something significant was happening to the character, and so I would always have them up front. Some of the ones not so special than others, but I mean, you take a look at it, like All Star Squadron, annual number 2 of the All Star Squadron was the finale of the story where the Ultra Humanite was fighting the All Star Squadron, and it resulted in like the that was where it had the Infinity Incorporated was in it, which then went on to have their own series, and they were introduced specifically in All Star Squadron to be for the characters to be introduced to then have their own book. So, and then along with the introduction of Amazing Man, the defeat of Ultra Humanite in that issue, along with uh, the death of Cyclotron and uh, Adam fighting Cyclotron, which would result in him developing super powers as opposed to just being a masked hero who used his bare knuckles. So that's when there's, because you take a look at Adam later on, he had a costume, or I should say, he had a mask that was much more similar to Cyclotron's mask in uh, older issues of showing the Justice Society and in the Infinity Incorporated. So that's like that, and then of course we have annual number 2, or I think it was annual 2 of the Justice League, where they formed the Justice League Detroit. So I mean, these were like big events to me when I was getting comics. So to me, it made sense to put the specials and the annuals up front before the regular series. But as I've been told, I'm a monster. I'm a barbarian for doing this. That's not the way books are kept in order. The annuals are in the back. Sorry, that's how I do it. That's how I've always done it. So, I mean, I will remain a monster. I will remain a barbarian. But that's how I'm going to continue to organize my comics, is to have the annuals up front. And I do that a lot of times. Um, uh, I always look at it this way: if because I can't get every single issue signed of in my collection, if I have to choose between issue 432 of Batman or and or annual 10, and there's nothing really going on. Let's say it was Mike DiCarlo. Mike DiCarlo did issue 400, blah, 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 and he did issue 10 or annual 10. If if that issue of Batman is just a regular issue with nothing significant, whereas the annual something significant is going on, I'm always going to pick that. Just like how with the Bloodline series and the Eclipso series, how those were all like part of an event, because annuals they were using annuals, both Marvel and DC, for as event books, because they'd done their research and they determined that kids had more money in the summertime, so that's when you would have like all your annuals were always in the summertime, uh, with some type of linked event like the Evolutionary War, Atlantis attacks, because the kids would have more money, and you'd want them to get to buy every single issue, or every single annual. And many times, annuals were good because it was a means for you to get a full story about a specific character, and it might result. And if it was a good enough story, it would result in you buying the regular ongoing monthly book. So that was the other reason why I always had annuals up front, because uh, pardon me, many times I bought annuals first before I start buying a monthly series. Remember how when I first started the 365 Days of Signed Comics, I had shown you guys annual number one of Batman the Outsiders, and how it had emotional significance to me. The other significance of that book was I'd never bought a single Batman the Outsiders issue up to that point, because my sister had given me that annual after rescuing me from that hellhole summer camp. Um, I I liked the annual, so I then started looking at when I see it in the spinner rack. I'm like, really like the annual. Let's check out this it as a regular ongoing series. Um, Same thing goes with like Avengers and X-Men, and I think the very first Incredible Hulk story I bought was an annual. I know that the very first issue of uh, Alpha Flight that I bought was an annual, and the reason why is because, like I said, I had seen it on the rack numerous times, but it wasn't until the annual came out that I gave it a shot and was like, wow, this is pretty cool. I don't know anything about these characters, and that's when I started buying the Alpha Flight as a regular, ongoing monthly book, was because of the annual. So that's one of the reasons why I hold annuals in high regard, and I have them up front. Plus, also, you've got a shitload of comics. It's one of those where it's like, I want to have the annuals up front because many times it gives you uh, if you want to revisit the books, you get a good taste. You know you're going to get a good generally you'd get a good story. And I do think overall, I've always been impressed with annuals done by Marvel and DC. So let's see. I'm just winging at this point with this body here. I know it's going to be just hide it with darkness. It's one of the things also I always noticed with Image was when in doubt, black it out. So you still got the form, you still got the energy, we still got the action. You don't need all the details. So, and that's one of the reasons, one of the things that kind of changed comics with the Image invasion and the Image creators was they would do that. They would like one of those where like they'd have like all these weight, all these like it's one of those where it's like, is it possible to have that many muscles? No, you just overdo it with the muscles and then blend it all together with textures and black a lot of it out, and it works because you're going after the action and the motion, not whether that's atomically correct. That's one of the reasons why you take a look up here with that arm. It's like one of those where it's like that anatomy is not right at all. I mean, in fact, you look at it, his arm isn't going like this. His arm's really kind of going like that when you look at it, but it still works for it because it's one of those where it's like, I mean, I'm sorry, he's got claws for fingers. He's not. It's not very realistic when he's got claws for fingers. So you can kind of get away with that. Even George Perez, uh, he actually admits that he did not have a great anatomy, but he could fake it well enough that he could pull it off as a believable anatomy. And that's when he was first starting his career. So, I mean, so when people like that's not right anatomy, it's like technically none of it's the right anatomy, but you're not trying to go do a still life of the character. You're trying to uh, emulate or fool the audience with overextending the body and kind of like in many ways like an animation, the push and pull of the human body, so you get the idea of dynamic action. So, but so, and then of course, lastly, we had this morning with Sunday Comics on John's Long Box. He did GI Joe #1. And just from, you can tell, just from all my comments during that, I was a huge G.I. Joe fan. In fact, if it wasn't for Star Wars and G.I. Joe, I never would have gotten into superhero comics. Um, I'm open and out front. G.I. Joe and Star Wars, they were my gateway drugs to superhero comics. Uh, and it was always team books. I always loved team books when I first got into comics. It was never the Superman title or the Batman title. Why? Because that's just one character. I want team books. I want 5 or 6 different characters. And I actually like, for me, the only successful team book was a minimum of 7 characters. You had to have at least 7 characters for a successful team book. If you had less than that, it really wasn't my time, because like part of it also was, if I'm going to spend 35 cents or up to 75 cents, because yeah, that's how like when I first started getting comics, it was with Star Wars was 35, and I think by the time I started buying JLA, it was either 50 cents or 75 cents. And I remember uh, you if I had 50 cents, or then if I and then with tax you had, it was be 53. But if I had 53 cents, was I going to spend it on a Superman book, or was I going to spend my money on a team book? Because I got a lot more characters to read and then draw. So that's the reason why I always went to team books. And GI Joe was a team book. Um, And so, like when Mark, when John was talking about like, hey, I'm going to get issue 2 now. Um, when it comes to GI Joe, I feel that they were able to spend more time with uh, character development or in the characters up to, I would say, issue 22. Issue 21 was the silent issue. So I'd say issue 22. After issue 22, Larry was bogged down with constantly having to introduce uh, new characters and new vehicles. Why? Because they were coming out with new characters, and it's like, hey, the whole purpose of this comic book is to sell the toy. So we've introduced Tripwire. We need to have Tripwire in an upcoming issue. Whether he fit the story or not, he had to be included. So Larry was challenged. Larry was always challenged. He had to create story scenarios or conflict scenarios where the new Joe would be needed and would take place. Um, that's the reason why it was like the whole reason why you had him in the swamp, introducing Mutt and Junkyard, uh, was because at the same in that wave of Joes, when they introduced Junkyard and Mutt, which was the dog handler and the dog, at the same time they also were introducing Zartan, and Zartan's headquarters was in the swamp. So that's the reason and he had the swamp skimmer, which if you bought the action figure, he came with the swamp skimmer. So that's the reason why he had the story in the swamp, and that's the reason why he came up with Cobra Island, because they had they were introducing uh, the tactical battle platform, which was an oil rig, along with uh, the Cobra water vehicles, and Shipwreck was being introduced and whatnot. So that's the whole reason why they came up with Cobra Island, was because they were introducing a bunch of water vehicles. So how do you utilize the water vehicles? Create a water, create a scenario where they're going to be on the water a lot. So I always and then now Larry did a great job. Larry did a great job adapting the story to introduce the toys. And hey, I the one thing I did a lot when I was a kid was a lot of times I would uh, read the comic, and even if the comic ended on a cliffhanger or not, I would then break out my toys and start playing with them, because I was creating my own GI Joe adventure after the story was after I was done reading that issue. And if that meant that I had to break out my Star Wars action figures and my Adventure People vehicles just so I could use them and pretend that they were the other vehicles that I didn't own yet, that's what I did. That's what I did. So yeah, GI Joe is one of those titles I always enjoyed. And it wasn't until later on, when I kind of grew out of toys. You know, you're too old to play with toys. I kind of lost interest in GI Joe because of that. But I picked it up later, and that's the reason why. Like I knew uh, when John was going over the book, I was able to provide so much input, specifically Dr. Burkhart, and how she wasn't a regular character, but she showed up at least 3 times in the series as a guest character. And that's the reason, like I said, she died in issue 205. Uh, Alpine was adamant, like, hey, she may be fundamentally against us, but as far as I'm concerned, she was one of us. She was a Joe. And in the final page of issue 206, Torpedo, Alpine, and Muskrat. It was either Muskrat or Long Range. I forget which Joe. The 3 Joes went to her funeral. And uh, when they shook uh, the when they shook the one person's hand, who I guess it was a relative of Dr. Burkhart, they gave her, they gave him a GI Joe challenge coin, and I guess the niece of the character, she goes, he says, he goes, yes, the Torpedo gave when Torpedo introduced himself to me when he shook my hand, he gave me this, and it was and he holds out his hand. It shows the GI Joe challenge coin, and she goes, the girl, the niece, I guess. She goes, "Do you know what to do with it?" And he goes, "Yes, I do." And he takes it and he places it on top of her gravestone, basically signifying that Dr. Burkhart, we respected the fact that she was fundamentally opposed to GI Joe. She may have understood why we had GI Joe, but she was fundamentally opposed to it. But because of that, it's that was the ultimate challenge. That was the ultimate form of respect that a secret government strike force could instill upon someone, is to place a Joe challenge coin on top of her gravestone. So I really like that. I mean, so but guys, this video is about over. It's over 30 minutes, and it's funny. I used to always try to keep my videos at like 15 minutes, but now it's getting to the point where it's getting harder and harder to meet that 15 minutes. And try to initially keep the 20. Now it's creeping up to 30. So I'm sorry about that, guys. I will try to get myself back down to 15, 20-minute videos. It's kind of getting hard because of Saturday videos and going and showing all the comics that I've signed and telling you about them. So, but I'm going to be working on this page today. So I will be posting on X multiple images of this. In fact, when I'm done with this video, before I even upload to YouTube, I'm going to take a picture of this and share it out. So, guys, remember, life is stressful, but just take it one dot at a time.